Hey everyone, so today I just wanted to take a look at the Sigma 50mm f1.4 art, which I managed to pick up for myself over the weekend. It was a Christmas present for myself, and it's something I look forward to using next year in 2016. So if you don't know already, Sigma has produced some really extraordinary lenses over the past couple of years. So it all started back in, I think it was 2012 when they released the Sigma 35mm f1.4 art. And from there on, they've had a lot of success with their art lineup of lenses. So that's included the 35, then came the 50, then the 24 and the 20. And those four primes have been really excellent for what they are. And people are asking for an 85, maybe a 135, maybe they'll be next. But at the moment, the Sigma art lenses are truly excellent. They're all class-leading optics, class-leading performance for a very good price. So they offer both great performance and great value. Perhaps the most different of all the art lenses is, in fact, the 50. So more or less, when people buy camera gear, they expect that the 50mm lens is something that you don't pay a lot for. Canon has a 50mm f1.8 STM, which is about 150 bucks, and it's one of the sharpest Canon lenses available. Nikon also has a 50 f1.8G, which is also a really good lens, which I've used extensively over the past couple of years, and I think that that's also a great lens at a very good price. So people aren't used to paying a lot of money for 50mm lenses, and then Sigma comes along and they bring out this lens which is around about $1,000. I paid around 900 bucks mine, and I think that changes the game. People aren't used to paying so much, and people aren't used to such the great quality that they can get from this lens. So that's something definitely to have a look at and to have a think about for sure if you're interested in this lens. But let me tell you this, just from my initial testing and just from what I've been able to use it for, this lens is absolutely excellent. So the sharpness is very, very good. The resolution is excellent. Can resolve a lot more fine detail than most of the lenses, certainly more than the Nikon 50mm f1.8G. And I think the difference between this lens and maybe the Nikon is in its contrast and its ability to render contrast. So there's two types of contrasts. There's what I would call macro contrast, and that's what most people would call contrast. So when you crank the contrast slider in Lightroom or in Photoshop, you're increasing the overall contrast. And there's also micro contrasts. So micro contrast is more sort of the definition between things which are dark and things which are light. So what we're talking about there is a combination of a couple of things: resolution, a lack of chromatic aberration, things like that that can actually affect the distinction between something that's light and something that's dark, and it gives the image punch. So when people talk about how crispy something is, how punchy something is, it's more to do with micro contrast than the overall contrast. So even if you do crank your sharpening, even if you do crank your contrast, even if you do crank your clarity, you're not going to be able to pull back those details that have been lost due to aberrations, due to a lack of resolution, things like that. This is where the Sigma really shines, and it's really where it flexes its muscles and shows how superior it is over other lenses such as the Canon 50 f1.8 or the Nikon 50 f1.8G. So taking a look at the specifications of the Sigma 50mm art, it's obviously a 50mm lens that opens up to f1.4, shuts down to f16, features 13 elements in 9 groups, I think it is. No, sorry, 13 elements in 8 groups. And one of the best things that I like about the Sigma 50mm art is the fact that it has a 77mm front filter thread. So that's really convenient because if you use, for example, a 24-70 Nikon or a 7200 Nikon, and I think it's probably the same for Canon, but if you use those common lenses, then it shares the same filters, which is actually quite handy. Then you don't have to bother with step-up rings or buying another set of filters, or just, it's easier. So I do quite like that. It's quite heavy, weighing in at 815 grams. So instead of feeling like a 50mm lens, it feels more like a 24-70. It's actually a bit shorter than a 24-70, but I think in the hand, it feels a lot like a 24-70, and the construction quality is great. So it's made out of mostly polycarbonates, or what most people call plastics, and there's been a bit of a debate recently, and I guess it's been ongoing for a while now, over what's sort of the best material to use for lenses. So people have always preferred metal because it feels cool, it feels nice, it feels tough, but metal isn't necessarily a good material to make lenses out of. So we've seen the transition to more and more plastic. For example, if you're a Canon shooter and you shoot Canon's newest 24-70mm f2.8L, the Mark II, you'll find that that's got a fair bit of plastic in it as well. And the same things, and it's the same for most new lenses that are being released. So for example, Canon's 35mm f1.4L2, that's also got a fair bit of plastic in it. So the trend is definitely shifting more towards plastics, and plastics are better at resisting heat. They don't expand and contract as much when exposed to extreme temperatures. They absorb more shock, so it's better for drops. They get less scratched, don't get scratched as easily. And I think, it depends on what you like and what you feel is premium, but I feel that the Sigma 50mm art is built very well. It doesn't seem to be cheaply built at all. It has a nice heft to it. It feels very good in the hand, feels very solid. The focus ring is a bit stiff, but you don't want to be manually focusing an f1.4. So if you buy this lens, the assumption is you're going to use it with autofocus, and the autofocus is excellent. So the performance there is great. It focuses very, very precisely, very well. I feel that it probably doesn't focus quite as well as the top range zoom lenses. So if you're used to a 24-70, if you're used to a 70-200, it won't focus as snappily as that. It doesn't sort of have that snap into focus. It sort of chugs into focus, so you can really feel it rolling into focus, but it does focus accurately. And I guess, the depth of field is a lot thinner at f1.4. It's only half the depth of field of an f2.8 zoom, so it does need that more precise focus to be able to draw out sharp shots. And when the focus is perfectly right, it produces amazingly sharp shots. So I think that's sort of an overview of the Sigma 50mm art. I'll just discuss some of the pros and cons of this lenses and whether it's for you. So I think the main pro of this lens is that it's great optics. It's a very, very optically strong lens. It's sharper than your average 24-70 zoom. It's sharper than your average 50mm lens. It's a very, very sharp lens. It resolves detail extremely well. It has a lot of micro contrast, and it's able to separate those light and dark areas of transitions that make those punchy images that you're used to seeing from the really expensive lenses. I think the other pro is that it's really well built. So I like how it's built, feels really nice in the hand. But of course, with those pros comes the cons. And the first con is the cost. But I guess the cost is justifiable. Look, if you make money from photography, it'll pay itself over. You'll be able to get better jobs. Your clients will be happy with their images. It'll pay for itself. If you're a hobbyist, think about how long you'll be using it. It's $1,000, but if you're using it for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, works out to be $50 to $100 per year. That's not too bad, right? But I think what's not as justifiable in terms of this lens is its weight. It really is a heavy lens, and a lot of the time I wish that it was lighter. I wish that I had my Nikon 50mm f1.8G, which I sold to get this lens. I wish that I had that lens when I'm going out for a walk, because this lens is huge. It feels exactly the same as carrying a 24-70. And the truth is, if I'm going out on a walk in daylight, do I really need f1.4? Probably not. So I might as well just take a 24-70 and get that zoom. So I think that's something that you need to really think about. It's a really specialist lens. One of the main benefits and reasons why I suggest to most beginning photographers to get a 50 is because it's cheap and because it's light. And this is neither of those two things. It's expensive and it's heavy. So it's very much a premium specialty lens that's reserved to people who know how to use it and who can really get the best out of it and the most image quality out of it they can. So I think, to sum up, it's a great lens. I love it very much, but I think that it does have a few shortcomings and it is a bit of a specialist lens. So ultimately, I think, in conclusion, it's a great lens. It's very good, but you already know that. You've already read about that on the internet. So what are my experiences with this lens? My experiences are mostly positive. So I like it because it's got great image quality, the focus is great, the micro contrast is great, and the rendering is excellent. But I don't like its weight, and I don't like its price. But, I can live with the price. The weight, I don't know. I guess with me, I've always sort of separated the cameras and the lenses that I use for professional work and what I use for my own personal work. So that's sort of like street photography on the side, or sort of family photography, that sort of thing. I've always preferred smaller and lighter cameras for my personal work. And if you're like me and you want a light 50, well, there's always the option of getting a Canon 50 f1.8 or a Nikon 50 f1.8G, paying $150 and having that as a side option. So I think it's not completely unreasonable, the weight. You do pay a weight penalty, but I think that what you get back in image quality, what you get back in build quality, pays for that multiple times over. So it's an excellent lens at an excellent price, and I particularly enjoy using it. So I hope you've enjoyed this review. Maybe not so much of a review, but more sort of just a discussion of a lens that I particularly like and that I just bought. If you enjoy these videos, please subscribe to my channel, leave a like, maybe comment. What would you like to see? What lenses do you think I should review or have a look at? And what else do you want to see in my kit? So thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you all next time.